we're going to be canvassing for Jamal Bowman. Folks, with that in mind, you know, stuff got real wacky just, God, was it earlier today? Earlier today, Hillary Clinton endorsed the opposition. We gotta be out there, man. Exclamation point PV in chat. You got to get out there. Progress.win/Vosh-primary, or you can just hit exclamation point PV and click on the link that comes up. That's a lot easier. Chat, is Clinton endorsing Latimer against Bowman a good thing or a bad thing? Who knows, you know? I don't know how much pull Hillary Clinton has, but it is a signal that the establishment Democrats want Jamal Bowman out. And the reason they want Jamal Bowman out in this particular instance is, without a doubt, because AIPAC has, like, launched the missiles at Jamal Bowman, man. Like, really, really, really off. Yeah, she had to hide replies in this for a reason, you know? Maybe she's helping, who knows? Jamal Bowman has incurred a significant amount of antagonism from AIPAC. I mean, here, this is from what, 3 weeks ago?
Why has a primary race in one of the country's safest congressional districts garnered national attention all of a sudden?
Exclamation point PV. I mean it, guys. If you live in the New York area, if you're in the vicinity, okay, you have the potential to do something real neat, okay? Real cool with progressive victory, all right? I'm going to be there. The cool kids are going to be there. If you're not there, you're not cool. I'm sorry to say. If you aren't present there, it's like 8 billion people who aren't going to be cool that weekend, you know?
For decades, Oregon's 3rd district, which includes much of Portland, has been represented by this man, Democratic Congressman Earl Blumenauer. Last year, Blumenauer announced his plans to retire, setting up a race for...
This is cute, by the way.
...for his replacement. And Oregon's 3rd district is in solid Democratic territory.
When does
whoever
Jamal
wins next week's primary
on?
Will certainly likely cruise to victory in
Here we go.
this, if you will, among Democratic politics. And fresh off of that victory, AIPAC has already set sights on its next target, New York Democratic Congressman Jamal Bowman.
I know that guy.
On Thursday, the group dropped nearly $2 million on attack ads against Bowman. With that influx of funds and a challenger handpicked by AIPAC, it is no surprise that New York Magazine has dubbed Bowman, quote, the most endangered Democrat in America. Congressman Jamal Bowman joins me now. Congressman, it's great to have you back.
Do attack ads even do anything? Yes. As trite as they may seem from the outside, they do, in fact, do things. Folks, this is real important, okay? Look, obviously, in an electoral sense, we have not been given much to salivate over this year. This community is not crazy hyped about Biden winning. Biden has to win over Trump. That doesn't mean we have to be super excited for it. That's how it is. That's Biden's fault. It's not our fault. Jamal Bowman is anti-Zionist. He's been on the progressive side of this particular dynamic. And AIPAC, in a show of power, has opened the coffers up and unleashed an ungodly amount of money and power in trying to go after pro-Palestinian congressmen or people at every level of politics, you know? No matter what happens in the Gaza Strip, guys, we really, 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 really don't want AIPAC buying politicians. They got Fetterman. They've unseated people already. Vosh, I didn't know stuff like this would be reported on. I thought it would be all hush-hush behind the scenes. That's the crazy thing, Lily Krem. It's often not that secret. It's usually pretty open. There are rules for disclosure, and yes, there's a lot of bribery and corruption that happens that we don't keep track of, but a lot of it's just plain and open. AIPAC has made their antagonism incredibly direct and clear, you know? They are fully intending to just use money to get Jamal Bowman out of office and replace him with someone more compliant, you know? We are going to try to go out there and canvass to help. Our efforts will be substantial. They will not be a guarantee of victory in any sense. This is really down to the wire, guys. You know? But I need you guys to come out and help me. We did the fundraising streams. I played Paper Mario for 20 hours and did all the voices as it destroyed my throat. That money secured funding for people traveling a greater distance to head on over and help canvass. But if you're in the area, if you live in New York, and statistically speaking, a significant number of you do, it's New York, pretty dense area. We'd really appreciate it if you came by. More info, exclamation point PV. You click on that, you get info. Give it a look. Give it a look. Give it a look.
on the show. Thank you so much for making it here. So let me just get your reaction. I want to kind of mention a little bit of this ad, and there's an interesting dynamic that is playing here, because AIPAC obviously wants to strengthen the American-Israel relationship. They want politicians who believe in that relationship. And notably, the ads that they are running against you and others make no mention of Israel. In fact, in this Politico article, a spokesperson for the PAC told Politico, "We run ads on the issues voters are most..."
Wasn't Jamal Bowman the politician that pulled the fire alarm in Congress? Yes! He was alerting people to the threat that AIPAC poses to American democracy. God bless him. Is there anything cool policy-wise he's done? Yes. And you can look that up. But at the moment, this is an extremely clear and evident case of AIPAC fully just trying to buy out a seat to remove a progressive. This isn't some edge case policy deal. This is good versus evil shit, okay?
Focused on. And yet, if this issue is not the issue that voters are focused on, that they're not even mentioning Israel, why are they going after you by primarying you and others who are apparently more pro-Israel, not even talking about it?
Yeah, because they don't want Israel to be criticized. They don't want Israel to be held accountable. They don't want anyone to mention Palestine or speak up for Palestinian rights and lives. We fight for the lives of all people, Israeli and Palestinians, Jewish, Christian, Muslim. That's what we do. But the people in the district, they decide, we decide as the people who's going to govern this district and what issues matter most to us. And, because they cannot, and AIPAC doesn't know the district, right? So they're literally trying to work with, they're funded by Republican, right-wing, racist billionaires, the same people who fund Donald Trump, the same people who are going after our voting rights.
And remember, they're going after Jamal Bowman over the Israel stuff only as a wedge. It's a front. There are Zionist interest groups that want Jamal Bowman gone, but in reality, America is already pretty solidly Zionist in its representation, right? Like, it's not like Jamal Bowman's removal is going to protect the pro-Israeli majority in Congress. They're doing it because they're using it as an excuse to get rid of a progressive, When is Bernie next up for re-election? He's next up in this year. Gotcha. They're here. Bernie's fine? Oh, he's fine. He's fine. He's fine. Bernie will die in his seat. Listen, okay? He'll die doing what he did best. Being a cute grandpa in the Senate.
Reproductive rights, those are the people who fund AIPAC. So they're literally coming in to black and brown communities, black and brown districts, trying to buy races from the people who live there. And it's not going to work. They don't know Co-op City. They don't know the Bronx. They don't know Mount Vernon. They don't know Yonkers, New Rochelle, Port Chester, White Plains, Greenburgh, the river towns. They don't know these areas. They try to bully their way into elections. We beat their guy, Elliot Engel, in 2020. We're going to beat their guy in this race as well.
They're also backing people who are election deniers in other districts. I mean, the consistency that they have is that for them, it is about Israel. It is not about reproductive rights. It's not about resources.
Yeah, pay no mind to how our massive treasure trove of wealth just consistently leads us to funding and protecting far-right lunatics and anti-democracy advocates, even though moderate Democrats are often themselves pro-Israel, Like, pay no mind to the fact that it would be entirely possible for AIPAC to promote an entirely pro-Israeli agenda while only promoting Democrats, but for some reason they keep, promoting the fascists.
These communities, it's not about the integrity of American elections or the security of our elections, because they're all over the place. They focus on this singular issue. How you say that is not an issue that people in your district care about, or is something that's going to work with the people in your district, this kind of like voting manipulation. But what do the people of your district care about? And certainly, what do they care about when it comes to the issue of Israel and Gaza?
Correct. So with regard to this issue, 69% of my district...
All right. Thank you, Jamal Bowman, for the funny number.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Also endorse Latimer in order to, quote, stand up Cori Bush, Summer Lee, and Ilhan Omar.
I know
For
that
more,
lady.
Congressmember Bowman joins us from Yonkers. Congressmember Bowman, welcome back to Democracy Now! The primary is coming up fast. I think June 15th begins early voting. Can you talk about, I mean, the kind of history that's
3 days
being
from now
made in this re-election bid that for your seat?
Yes, it's unprecedented. I believe AIPAC is spending more money in this race than they have ever spent before. You know, they are bombarding
we get numbers on
my
that?
constituents with ads, ironically, that have nothing to do with Israel, even though they are a lobby group for Israel. And so it's been overwhelming for the district. The district is actually pretty tired of it and frustrated by it and angered by it because they know my record. They know what I've done the last 3 years, bringing in over $1 billion to the district, reducing gun violence, investing in mental health and substance abuse, investing in affordable housing, etc. But they also know my work for 10 and a half years in this district as a middle school principal. So for AIPAC to come in and try to hurt my reputation and manipulate people with disinformation and in some cases outright lies is pretty despicable. And it is mainly because I called for a permanent ceasefire back in October, and we have been consistent in calling what's happening in Gaza right now an ongoing genocide.
Based. Again, they're using this as a convenient excuse to target Bowman. It's not actually about Israel. They just want a left-wing representative out. They're spending so much goddamn money. It's insane. Y'all gotta show up, or you're lame. Mondaire Jones, the gay Democrat that threw Bowman under the bus, showed up at Pride Fest Parade, got roasted, 9:56 the video. You don't say.
Just asking a question of somebody who wants to be their representative, but watch how he reacted. It's so humiliating.
Let's go. Andrew?
I was wondering, will you return donations from Donald Trump donors? Do you think it's okay for Republican money to be entered in primaries? Excuse me, you're running for Congress and you're not answering?
Are you knocking on doors? That's what canvassing is.
Thank you for your education. Have a good day.
Will you? It's a very simple question. Sir, you're running for Congress and you can't answer a simple question?
Ma'am.
Will you return donations from Donald Trump donors? Do you think it's okay for Republican money to be interfered?
I don't think they're going to get an answer. $25 million spent. Jesus Christ, it's insane. Why you got the phone out? Everyone on their phone these days. It's because of millennials, you know? Macklemore made a pro-Jamal Bowman ad? I remember seeing that song. Did Macklemore contribute that song for the ad?
To disproportionately
what's up,
target
man?
black and brown members of Congress and candidates that they've recruited, like George Latimer. He's used dog whistles when talking about Jamal Bowman, and on top of that, he's engaged in the same racism that Republican candidates have also engaged in against black members of Congress. But I'm going to let Jamal Bowman explain for himself. This is an interview from Illuminati. Let's watch.
You've also had like these attacks, these mailers, right, where they've been darkening, literally darkening your image. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic racist attack in campaigns. It usually comes from right-wing Republicans, but it's coming from a Democrat, so-called Democrat now, who's running against me. But yeah, the mailer with the darkening of my skin to make me look scarier. But it hasn't only just been the mailer. It's also been, you know, after our first debate, there were people from my district commenting under my opponent's Facebook posts saying that they hope I have a stroke and they referred to me as a thug. And he did not condemn what they said, and all he did was simply take it down. He also said that I take money from Hamas, which is a terrorist organization.
I've heard that one.
Right.
To which when someone told him to show proof, he sent them a Free Beacon article, which is the most right-wing, crazy, psycho article you could get. So you know the credibility.
Hold on, what is this article that I'm looking at right here? Yonkers Times? Okay, well that's sort of like regionally relevant. Latimer's the opponent, calls out Bowman's dark money group that spent millions attacking Democrats. The dark money group mentioned, Justice Democrats, one of the most well-known and transparent... Okay, the secretive... They don't want you to know about this one, folks. What's a yonker? You know, when you're yonking it. This is a very pro-Latimer article. My God, I haven't seen anything like that. You know what I haven't seen? I haven't seen any people in favor of Latimer. I've seen people in favor of Bowman. I've seen corporations and pundits in favor of Latimer. I haven't seen any people in favor of him. Didn't they have a debate? There we go.
County Executive George Latimer.
Probably not going to have moderators as good as the previous debate.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here and agreeing to take all of our views.
This is what a Latimer canvas looks like. Oh, no. Oh, my God. It's New York 14, right? Oh, my God. Do you guys want to know? Oh, it's 16? New York 16? Gotcha. Hold on. You know, 4 and 6 are pretty much the same number, I feel. New York 16. Yeah, there we go. 40% white. 30% Hispanic, 20% black, 7% Asian, and everything else is far smaller. Really shows you who's coming out for Latimer, huh? Like, goddamn, dude. Super diverse district. They bring in sunscreen to the Latimer function.
Your questions today, because we all know local elections lead to national change, and we have so very much to discuss with both of you. So far, this has been a race where the fallout from the Israel...
Isn't it mostly suburbs? 38% of constituents in this district lived at or below the federal poverty line in 2010. So my guess is probably no. Like, there are affluent areas. I mean, it says right here in the Wikipedia page, so you can kind of get a feel for where the opposition is. The current 16th district, while still containing impoverished areas, such as some neighborhoods of Mount Vernon, also contain affluent areas, such as Scarsdale and Rye, resulting in a more mixed income demography. And I would bet you anything that those fair-skinned individuals we just saw are probably more in this area. That'd be my guess. List of members representing the district, and because it's in New York, it goes back all the way to 1800. There's Jamal Bowman. There's our guy.
Israel-Hamas war has taken center stage, and the nation is watching to see the outcome of this primary, your primary, gentlemen. But there are clearly so many other critical issues impacting our local communities as well, like housing affordability and public safety. And a majority of our questions today will come from our News 12 viewers, who submitted over 100 questions over the past several weeks. Some of you here today to ask those questions directly. Welcome, everyone. But first, we're going to hear directly from the candidates themselves, who agreed on the speaking order for this debate ahead of time.
That's
County
nice of them.
Executive Latimer, it's time for your opening statement, sir.
Thank you very much, Tara. Thank you all for being here today, and for those who are watching at home. I'm George Latimer, and I'm running for Congress in the 16th Congressional District. And I'm doing so because I believe this district needs a different focus in the way we send a person to Congress, to work on legislation.
Okay, so let's begin with the obvious. Ugly suit, poor shirt, poor combination of tie and shirt. Also, he looks evil, like in like a phrenological sense. Like, he looks evil. Like, he looks like cast an evil guy. Like, let's, you know, sometimes it really is like that, you know?
To work on funding of important initiatives that are a priority here in Westchester County: affordable housing, job growth, climate change, and protecting a woman's right to choose, and dealing with all the myriad of local issues that exist. 4 years ago, the incumbent today ran against a prior incumbent, and he said at that time that the prior incumbent was focused too much on international issues, and that he was not focused enough on things.
I didn't even notice his eye. I mean, his entire face, dog. Holy shit. Honestly, now that I've noticed it, the eye is more charming. You know, it makes him look more dopey than evil. You're arguing for him? Are we making the argument that the eye is actually like a redeeming characteristic? Vosh is so progressive. Oh, you like catch me on that. It's like, oh, you're just saying he's evil because the disability. No, now that I've noticed it, actually, I like him. Thanks to the disability. Thank you. You know, you think you're gonna catch me? I'm too fast. I'm woken my way around you, man.
Back home, and that he was not connected to the district. Well, we're here 4 years later for an accountability as to who best can represent the people of this district. I know Westchester County intimately, which is the largest portion of the district, and I'm working very hard to learn the Bronx portion of the district, nearby where I grew up, in the south side of Mount Vernon. I hope that over the course of this debate and over the course of the rest of the campaign, we'll talk about the issues that matter, because I've devoted my whole life to public service, to public policy, to substance, not just to style. and ultimately, it's your choice.
Your opening statement, Congressman Bowman.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. I'm Congressman Jamal Bowman, and I've served in this role since January 3rd, 2021. 3 days later, MAGA Republicans attacked us at the Capitol, killing multiple people. I've been fighting MAGA Republicans ever since I've gotten to Congress, and I've been fighting their racism my entire life. I was raised by a single mom along with my 3 sisters in public housing during the crack cocaine epidemic. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I had the privilege of serving in education for 20 years before becoming the first black man in U.S. history to hold this congressional seat. I come from the working class, and I have served the people of this district directly as a middle school principal for 10 years before I decided to run for Congress. Now I'm in Washington working with President Biden to pass historic legislation like the CHIPS and Science Act and to bring at least $1 billion to our district.
Sorry, she just gets on my nerves how we lump all Hispanics into one group as a race when we throw everyone else into racial groups based on skin color. It's the inconsistency. Yeah, aren't they not even going to have Hispanic as a separate racial category in the future? Are they making that change, or is that it's like an older it's an older thing. It's a carryover, you know. Like I don't think Hispanic is thought of as a race like broadly culturally in America that much, because there's a lot of recognition that there's so much variety there. Yeah, it's like non-Hispanic white. Yeah, there's white Hispanic and non-white Hispanic. It's like Hispanic is like an overriding category where you can be white and be Hispanic, or be non-white and be Hispanic, but that would count in the race category. It's kind of dumb. A lot of black Hispanics don't want that. All I'm saying is that it's kind of a historical artifact. It's not, yeah.
Serve the people of this district. But it's not about the $1 billion, and it's not even about the historic legislation. It's about communities in our district that have been the least lost and left behind, communities that continue to be marginalized by lack of action from local government and congressional government, which is why I ran in the first place. We got to deal with the issue of racial justice, inequality, voting rights, climate justice, and all of the issues MAGA Republicans, who my opponent is working with, are trying to take away from us in Washington. This choice on June 25th is about the future of our country and our humanity versus a status quo politics that continues to leave too many behind. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Latimer's not actually cockeyed. He's just scared to take an eye off the only black guy in the room. Jesus. I hope Jamal uses that one during the debate. He couldn't. But it'd be the greatest moment in American political history. Holy shit! Oh my God!
Thank you, Congressman. County Executive Latimer, we're off and running. Let's go. Let's take some questions now, and we will begin with what has been the most prevailing issue in your race so far, the Israel-Hamas war. The conflict has opened a deep divide and led to bitter infighting within the Democratic Party, and now your primary is seen as somewhat of a bellwether of how the war could potentially factor into the general election this fall. The 16th Congressional District, home to one of the largest Jewish communities in America, and also a growing Arab community. And lately,
wait, that's crazy. This is also at 209. You realize that, right? The last stream it was at 209. This is 209 in the stream VOD. That's crazy. That's just how it works, you know? It's just like that's the moment.
Seen intensity over this issue pouring out onto our local streets and especially our college campuses. Question for you both. Why do you each feel that you best represent the values of the majority of voters in this district? Mr. Latimer, you're up first.
I think it's important to understand that in this district, we have a diversity of population, which includes one of the highest concentration of Jewish residents. So this issue of Israel means a lot to people in the 16th district on a very personal, direct way. My sense is a reasonable sense of where we are in a very controversial environment in the Middle East that dates back over many years, not just over the last couple of years. We've seen Israel created 75 years ago as a valid country. It has a right to exist, and it has a right to exist on defensible borders. It has a right to be able to grow and prosper as it has over this period of time. And I do believe in a two-state solution. I think there needs to be a country that is committed to peace if there's going to be a country alongside of it. And that peace has been broken many times in the past. 1948, the War of Independence. 1967, the Six-Day War. 1973, the Yom Kippur War. The Intifada in the year 2000. All of those things are examples of where the peace was broken. Now we come to a position where we want to look for peace going into the future. It takes both sides to be committed to peace. Hamas in October 7th went over that borderline, viciously murdered people, and created a horrible situation in which they took hostages. Any future for peace begins with the release of the hostages or the remains of the hostages. And from that point forward, humanitarian aid, a cessation of hostility makes sense. But it doesn't make sense.
This is such a bullshit way of opening a debate to begin with, because, again, I'm really sorry, like, to confront the dark reality of American, like, the electorate's behavior. They don't give a fuck about foreign policy, dude. Literally no one in this district is thinking like, wow, I can't wait to replace Jamal Bowman, who is pro-Palestinian, with somebody who is pro. That is not how this works. So the fact that this is being opened with, like, on this level is such an indication this guy's an AIPAC plant. Like, fully, okay, let's make it about this. But, like, what it's really about is just getting a progressive out of office, you know?
If we're going to look at this as a one-sided issue and the anti-Israel approach, which the incumbent has taken over this period of time. And it matters in the district because it matters to people who live in this district.
Congressman Bowman, your response, please.
I've said since 2019, I believe in a two-state solution, and I believe in Israel's right to exist. I actually went to Israel way before October 7th to learn more about what's happening in Israel on the ground. I went to East Jerusalem. I went to the West Bank. I saw the Iron Dome. And probably the most moving experience I had when I was there is when I went to Yad Vashem and saw the Holocaust Museum. So I've been working since I've gotten in to learn as much about this issue as possible so that we could work towards a two-state solution, not just give lip service to a two-state solution, which is what people have been doing for several decades. Regarding the current situation, I align myself with Senator Chuck Schumer. Benjamin Netanyahu should not be the leader of Israel at this time. He is causing more harm to Israel than good, and what's happening in Gaza, it's been taken to court because it may come up as being proof of war crimes against the people of Gaza. 100,000 dead or injured, the majority women and children. We have to speak out about that, because going after Hamas in this way is not going to end the cycle of conflict that has been going on for 75 years. We can have a free Palestine and fight anti-Semitism, and that's what we need to do here, not just through rhetoric, but through education and connecting communities.
Congressman, let me ask you a quick...
Obviously, like, objectively a better answer, and one more aligned with factual reality. The crazy thing, too, is that because in reality, like, the American electorate don't really give a about foreign policy in terms of why they vote for their candidates, like, what is he going to say? What is Latimer going to say that can test this in any meaningful way? The thing that AIPAC is ostensibly going after Jamal Bowman for is the fact that Jamal Bowman is sympathetic to the Palestinian people. But so are Democratic voters, meaning that Latimer can't come out here and rep the official AIPAC position, which is let them bitches die, who gives a f. Latimer can't come out here and say, like, well, I think that Jamal Bowman's statements of sympathy to mulched infants are horrible. He can't do that. So what does he say? What does he say? What is he going to call him anti-Semitic for? They both, you know, two-state solution or whatever. Like, what are you actually going to go after him for?
Quick follow-up before we head to some viewer questions. Do you believe, when we're talking next steps, you have stated that you are a vocal supporter of a two-state solution. Can there be a two-state solution in your mind as long as Hamas remains in control of any portion of Gaza?
No, Hamas needs to be condemned and immediately dealt with. No, there can't be, so we have to deal with them.
And on the flip side, Mr.
And Jamal Bowman, of course, understands that without him saying anything that sounds like support of Hamas, Latimer doesn't really have, like, a hook to go after.
Latimer, can there be a two-state solution as long, if that is what you advocate, as long as Mr. Netanyahu remains in power?
I don't think it's a question of who's in power. I think the Israeli people need to see that they have a partner for peace. And they don't see a partner for peace right now. I think the role that President Biden plays in all of this is an honest broker. Israel knows that it needs the United States as an ally. And I have taken the position, I think it's the intelligent position for a legislator to take, a future legislator, is to work through your legislative bodies and try to influence the president in that fashion, not to have 435 secretaries of state all commenting on every little nuance of this. And if Joe Biden understands, as I know he does, and the people around him, that this is going to take negotiation between the Israeli community, between the Arab community, those that are willing to negotiate with us, that is the surest direction to peace. Statements that are made outside of that may not be helpful, and in fact, it may be counterproductive in the process.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Congressman, let's take some questions now from the rising tensions that we've especially seen on our local college campuses, which have led to canceled classes, commencements, hundreds of arrests. Our first question comes from Janet. She is a legal search consultant from Scarsdale, and she has a question on some of the language that's being used at the protests. Janet, thank you for joining us. What is your question, please?
What about inflation?
Candidates, do you consider the phrase "from the river to the sea" hate speech?
This is totally speaking to the heart of the interests of the American people, and definitely not like a constructed environment in which we are, manufacturing like a pretense for accusing Jamal Bowman of anti-Semitism. Eat shit. I don't want to get like fully conspiratorial. I'd like to keep it at a solid like 20 to 25% conspiratorial if possible, but it is my personal position that every single individual here was paid by AIPAC, the building constructed overnight by AIPAC, the moderator, AIPAC itself sort of smushed into the homunculus. I hate all of this. I hate all of them. Jamal Bowman has to win! PV.
And or advocating for the eradication of the state of Israel.
Congressman Bowman, let's get your take.
I know some do, others don't. I do not.
County Executive Latimer?
I think it is hate speech because I think
Man stick to his guns right there. Not even a waffling answer.
Clear that from the river to the sea has meant specifically the eradication of the Jewish population from the land of Israel. Now, it may be that there are young people who are parroting the phrase because they hear it, they've seen it on the internet. You might ask them what river, what sea, and they can't answer that. But what's behind the marketing campaign that's being advanced is to try to delegitimize Israel and that there be a free Palestine.
Oh, no. Kind of letting the mask slip a little bit there, huh? This is anti-Semitic because it's intended to delegitimize Israel.
Is a hopeful sign, but it has to accept the fact that there's an Israel there as well. And I don't believe that that speech, that the chanting free, free Palestine is meant to reach that point. I think it's meant to put the Israeli people in a negative light and ultimately to eradicate them from the state of Israel.
So let me ask you this, gentlemen, as it relates to these college campuses, your thoughts overall on the protest, and do you feel that our higher education leaders have acted effectively and appropriately in response? Mr. Latimer.
It's all over the ballpark because there have been protests at different colleges and different campuses. That there's a right for free speech is assured. If people want to protest what's happening over there, they have every right to be able to do that, and they have a right for free speech. And they have a right to free assembly. And in various different college campuses, it's the responsibility of the leadership of that college campus to determine what is an appropriate place that can be used and sufficient space to have this type of protest, assemble, and to speak, and to set the rules of it. College A may determine that you can go overnight. College B may not determine that. May determine you can't do that. You have to do it in a certain time frame. But the bottom line is those decisions get made, and it is important for the protesters to understand that they stay within those boundaries as fairness.
We have to move on. Congressman Bowman, your response, please.
If we didn't have free speech in this country and the right to peaceful assembly, we may still have enslaved Africans in our nation. We may still have Jim Crow. We still got to fight for women's rights, but we would have even less than we have right now. We wouldn't have LGBTQ rights in our country. Free speech, First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, is a bedrock of our democracy. I visited Columbia University. I went to the encampment. I met with students there so I could learn more about their perspective, their position, and what's happening there. I saw a library. I saw mental health supports. I saw students protesting peacefully. I also met with students who identify as pro-Israel students because I wanted to also hear their perspective and understand what incidents of anti-Semitism.
The crazy thing, too, by the way, is that like this is yet another instance of the inequality of the free speech discourse being weaponized against the left, but this time from the liberal side. Conservatives have always been screeching free speech whenever they get, I don't know, deplatformed for Sieg Heiling, but then they'll call for the censorship of anyone they can get away with. And for the most part, liberals tend to be better about this because they tend to buy into the right's disingenuous appeal to free speech. But in this case specifically, guys, have you seen any serious effort from the left, even like left posters, to ban or arrest Zionist students? Because I haven't. Now, I'm sure you can find some people on Twitter who have said it, but there is no institutional push for this on any level. Meanwhile, like with regards to the pro-Palestinian students, you know, UCLA is still probably hurting from the crackdown. I mean, it's crazy. You know, free speech, unless you're not already like the dominant hegemonic group, I guess.
Did they deal with? That is how we lead in this moment. We have to open doors, build bridges, and bring communities together. We have to listen to people from multiple perspectives so that we can get an understanding of a collective understanding so that we can move forward.
Thank you, Congressman. I know this is such an emotionally charged, important topic, and I promise you both of you were going to revisit it a little bit later on in the debate. But now I want to move on to another front of mind, quality of life issues for a lot of voters in the 16th congressional district.
We're going to get to a real issue?
It all goes hand in hand, right? Let's welcome now Lucas Perez. He's a 10th grader at Iona Prep, and he's here from Port Chester with his mom, Lena.
Okay.
Lucas, what is your question for the candidates?
Lucas got that shit on. I respect it. Young hustle. Let's go. Big money, money. All right, hit it.
Hi. As a student, I often take the train into the city and use the subway to get around. Whether it's going to school, going to Yankee Stadium, or visiting friends and family, I often feel unsafe in the city and at the subway stations. What is your plan to address crime and to support police in your district so people like me don't have to feel unsafe?
So, Lucas, I want to thank you for that question on a topic that News 12 has been investigating now for quite some time, rising crime. We look at the data constantly, and I should point out that it does show that our elected officials and the police are making progress when it comes to fighting crime. The latest statistics available show that shootings are down 36% in New York in just the past 2 years, but yet we
That's
just heard
nice.
from Lucas. There's that discrepancy between the data and people's emotions, and the latest survey.
Well, what are you going to do with that, man? Yeah, the data shows that violent crime is down like massively, but you know, then there's this kid. People's feelings of being unsafe are almost always like, are there homeless people acting weird in public? That's like 99% of it. It's not like this kid has seen a shooting, right? I mean, if he has, that's horrible. I think that probably would have mentioned that if he had. It's probably just like, you know, you go on the train and there's like a drunk bum there and he's making noise or something. I don't fault people, especially young people, for feeling unsafe in certain environments. Poverty can often cultivate an impression of a lack of safety, you know, depending on the kind of poverty too, right? Like, I've been in poor neighborhoods that felt vibrant and alive and safe, and I've been to poor neighborhoods that didn't, and a lot of it is just like a vibes thing, and I get that. But the data, man.
Survey I saw from a nonpartisan group found that only 37% of New Yorkers feel safe in their neighborhoods. 37%. So how do we explain that? More importantly, how do we address that? Congressman Bowman, get us started here on public safety. Thank you, Lucas.
Thank you, Lucas, for that question. We need to take a public health approach to public safety. We take a public health approach to our overall governance. Now, what does that look like? We have to deal with the issue of poverty and abject poverty in our communities. Our communities have been historically neglected, and as a result, we don't have the economic development and access and opportunity to the American dream because of redlining of our communities and poverty. We need to invest in mental health supports. We need to invest in substance abuse. We need to invest in education. We need to invest in workforce development. If we invest in these things, which we have done multiple times across the district, whether it's $700,000 to the YWCA in Yonkers, or another several $100,000 to the HOPE program in the Bronx, we've invested in programs for workforce development and mental health. Westchester Youth Shelter is another program we've invested in. So that's the approach, public health approach to public safety. My opponent, unfortunately, has defunded mental health over his time as county executive, and he doesn't see a public health approach as the right way to go.
County Executive Latimer.
I gotta say, Jamal Bowman has really stepped up his media game in the past few months because he sees the barrel of the AIPAC gun pointed at him. And I gotta say, him compared to 2022, I feel like he's stepped that shit up, you know? I feel like he's put it on a little bit.
Go ahead. What would you do to make our neighborhood safer?
My opponent doesn't know his facts. Lucas, the problem that you have is the same problem I had back in the mid-1970s. I worked in the Bronx at the time. I lived in Mount Vernon, and I had a graduate school program down at NYU. And I rode the subway, the D train, from the Bronx down to Manhattan. Then I took the number 2 train all the way back up to 241st Street. I had the same concerns you had then for all of the programs that we have to do, the public health elements and so forth. He said nothing in his comment about the police presence.
You know, this excellent and well-informed answer by Jamal Bowman, imperfect, incomplete. He hasn't mentioned we need to give $50 billion more to the New York City Police Department, famously an extremely effective deterrent to crime and a great use for your tax money. One more lane, 1 billion more cops. Let's go.
Ignore the police presence. How can you ignore the police presence? I've seen in the Bronx, in the 47th precinct and the 45th precinct.
This is such a white opinion, dude. Like, leaving aside the fact that the relationship between police presence and people's safety is tenuous, do you think it makes the significant Black and Hispanic portion of your constituency feel more safe when there are NYPD officers looming around? The guys who murdered Eric Garner, and then when the mayor said, hey, maybe you shouldn't do the chokeholds you're not allowed to do anyway, they all protested and didn't do their job for a bit, and then crime went down anyway.
additional police effort that works in harmony with the community and is able to represent a better way to keep people a sense of protection. That's why Co-op City is seen as one of the most safe sections of the Bronx, because there is a police working, but you need to fund the police. That's what I've done in Westchester County. We've fully funded the police, and that is a factor in why violent crimes are down in Westchester County. But we have also, contrary to his false facts, we've also supported a host of different programs and services. We've been able to build Memorial Field back and the Spring Ridge pools, public efforts that make people have recreational options instead of just hanging out on the street and potentially going in the best direction. Lucas, it's going to take a multifaceted approach, but you cannot have that approach unless you're prepared to fund public safety. He voted no in a bill that would have funded local small police departments, H.R. 6418. And when he voted no, he voted alongside Marjorie Taylor Greene in voting no on that bill. So there's your MAGA
Let's
connection.
have you finish your thought.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a rebuttal to that?
Go ahead, 30 seconds, Congressman.
Absolutely. So the county executive just mentioned he had the same challenges and fears and issues in the 1970s as you have right now, even though we have dramatically increased police funding over the last several decades.
And lower violence. Like, crime in New York City in the 70s was way worse than it is now, right?
So within that decade, those decades, that period of time, we still have the same challenges because all we've been doing is funding police. And police will tell you themselves. I've met with law enforcement, I've met with ATF, NYPD to understand what their work is like and what their needs are. They'll tell you they need more supports in these other areas because all they're doing is arrest and rearrest and rearrest. We have a recidivism problem in our country, and mental health substance abuse helps to deal with that. Memorial Field is a field. It's not investing in mental health.
Okay, we have to move on now from public safety to some pocketbook issues. We know the inflation fight is still far from over, as evident by the Federal Reserve just announcing their decision to leave interest rates as is. And many New Yorkers tell us, they tell you both, it's getting harder and harder to live here in this district. So we've got a viewer question now from Emmanuel Finlay. He immigrated to the Bronx from Sierra Leone back in 2000, and he tells us that finding affordable housing has been a struggle ever since. Emmanuel, go ahead.
This for both candidates. What will the
New York City Police Department currently has a budget of $5.8 billion, which would place it as the 38th most well-funded military in the world. Jesus. So that means it's up there with the military of Thailand, a military dictatorship. That's cool, man. Whatever. Whatever, dude. Yeah, that sounds about right. The Thai military was able to take control of an entire nation. What has the New York City Police Department done? I ask you. They spend $500 million just on police brutality cases every year. You mean like on settlements? Like paying off the families of the people they brutalize and kill? Yeah.
candidates do to take care of Americans and legal residents living in New York? And will you be willing to champion and pass a law requiring the government to provide a detailed breakdown of how it spends our tax dollars?
George Latimer, we know that this is a problem that extends beyond Bronx borders to here in Westchester, where the average selling price of a home just surpassed $800,000. So let's have you detail your plans on this front.
Well, Emmanuel, we have a detailed breakdown of how we spend public money in Westchester County. It's called the county budget. It's online. I'm happy to walk through it with you so you can see these different things. If the issue is affordable housing, Westchester County, under our administration, has helped incentivize 3 times the amount of affordable housing that existed in the prior administration. And Westchester has done more for affordable housing than any suburban county outside of New York City. I don't have authority in the city of New York, but where I have had authority, we've expanded affordable housing. You don't take my word for it. Look at Mayfair projects over in Greenburgh. Look at the Sawpits Center in Portchester. Place after place after place where we've added affordable housing where it didn't exist before. We've also made buses free during the summertime here in Westchester County. That has still not yet come to New York City or other parts, but we went ahead and we did that. We've also suspended sales tax on home heating costs over the course of the prior winter to try to make it more affordable for people. So I think it's important to understand that under my leadership, we've done positive, substantive things, not just talk about things.
That's time. Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Congressman Bowman, what actions would you take on this front?
Housing is a human right. We are living in a housing crisis across the country, and Westchester County embodies that crisis as much as anywhere else. People cannot afford to move here, to live here, to stay here. My opponent has been the county executive in control of a multi-billion-dollar budget. He could have done a lot more on this issue of affordable housing, and he's not. Whether it's related to his governance, his budget, or leveraging the privilege of his position. He is the executive. He makes the decisions. Members of Congress have to work with 534 other people to get a law to the president's desk. 2/3 needed in the Senate. We wrote a letter to President Biden not too long ago with Elizabeth Warren asking the president to do more, take executive action on affordable housing, and he did just that, capping rents with certain federally backed mortgages so they don't raise by more than 10% within a year. That's action we've taken directly.
I'd like the opportunity to rebut, if I may.
30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. The congressman has done a lot of letter writing and a lot of talking. We've actually produced affordable housing on the ground. When he said he could have done a lot more.
Obviously, I can't really weigh in on this because it's kind of dependent on the facts of the matter, and I'm not going to investigate the specific, like, respective housing policies because I don't care how much. Canvassing for Jamal Bowman in, like, fuck, 9 days? 9 days. I better see your guys out there, your asses out there too. I'm gonna get a big ass cheese wheel. 10, 9, I guess. And it's 10. I have to get there a day earlier. You know, set up stuff. You know how it is. No, Skynet, I didn't know that. Have you talked to Bowman? I've been feeding him all the answers. That's why I'm so proud of this debate, Bowman's performance, because it's my performance. I was there, giving him all the answers.
Me. When he said we could have done a lot more, let me tell you what he could have done. He could have been inside the Region 3 offices of Housing and Urban Development. He could have been using his power as a congressman to lobby to get more Section 8 help for Yonkers and Mount Vernon Northwest. He didn't do that. Excuse me.
We've done that.
Excuse me. Madam Moderator, would you please?
If we could speak one at a time.
No, this is my opportunity to speak.
Pussy!
Yes. Like
Bitch! Mods! Honestly, that was like a really fast, that was like no tolerance for being spoken over by a gentleman of color, Latimer, perhaps.
Wait,
right, just tell the truth. Don't lie.
Well,
Gentlemen, I can assure you, no one can hear your positions if we're talking over one another.
As long as I have enough time. I'm not talking over him. He interrupted me during my rebut. Okay, expect that for the rest of the debate. The bottom line is he's failed us because he's been too busy giving speeches about affordable housing instead of pushing to get actual results, actual dollars back. We produce actual results. He's had rhetoric.
Okay, can I rebut that, please?
Very quickly, because I got to get the bills paid and head to a commercial break. Go ahead, Congressman.
Okay. If you're African American in our district or Latino, you are more likely to live in abject poverty. You are more likely to not be able to afford housing in Westchester County. You have a shorter life expectancy. You have more horrible health outcomes than everyone else. Housing is central. When you mentioned Co-op City isn't safe because of its law enforcement alone. It's safe because it has stable housing.
You haven't done enough for Co-op City, have you?
Now who's interrupting who?
Oh, well,
that's stable housing. That's stable housing, right? We brought $100 million to Co-op City when we first represented it in the refinance.
Congressman, I apologize. I've got to go to commercial
we can keep it
break.
going.
I think we've spent a lot of time on this. I got to take a quick break, and we'll have much more on what has clearly already become a very spirited first debate for the candidates squaring off in the 16th Congressional District covering Westchester and the Bronx right after this.
No commercial break. I don't want to read too much into it, but I actually do. Thank you. Yeah, that's the sensitivity right there. I don't know, like the vibes, man. You with me? You with me on it, Latimer? We got to beat this guy. We got to beat this guy. All right, move it along. Are they going to cut? They're going to cut? We're going to see a cut? Okay. All right, yeah, okay.
Welcome back. You're watching the first debate for the two candidates in the 16th Democratic Congressional Primary, brought to you by News 12, Optimum, and the Business Council of Westchester. We're going to move on now to some other critical issues, starting with immigration and border politics, which has become a very emotionally local issue. With the arrival of thousands of asylum seekers to New York, Westchester alone is currently housing roughly 350 migrants, but their arrival has not been without controversy. Let's take another question now from a viewer. Ron Madden joins us from Yonkers. Welcome, Ron. He's an employee at the New York Medical College. Go ahead.
Currently, the region's seen an uptick in crime that's been attributed to new arrivals at our southern border. What's your position on applying more scrutiny to those wishing to enter the United States? And
Then we just go over a decrease in what is it? It's decrease in violent crime. Crime is massively down nationwide. That was my impression. Apparently, this guy's got the secrets we don't have access to. Can you guys see how all of this is like a setup to replace Jamal Bowman with a reactionary candidate, right? Like the positions that they're arguing over, the questions that are being fronted are the right-wing jab at Jamal Bowman. They're the, like, yeah, this is the southern border. It's New York, man. Maybe they mean non-violent crimes, Thana. Like there's more pickpocketing or whatever. I don't know. I mean, whatever the case is, like, you can see why these questions are being asked in the way that they are, right? Like, doesn't this feel in a lot of ways like a slightly more left-leaning version of a non-primary debate, of a general debate? Like, Jamal Bowman might as well be arguing against a Republican when it comes to their relative positioning here. And I know that's often the case in the difference between progressives and, like, more moderate Democrats, but again, that's the setup, right?
Supply more funding to border security.
Congressman Bowman, clearly this is a front-of-mind issue for a lot of voters in the 16th Congressional District. Where do you stand?
So I've been to the border, and I met with border security when I went there. They have incredible resources to deal with the challenges of our immigration system. What is missing is more FEMA support, and with more humanitarian support, and more judges and social workers and lawyers to help process those who are coming in seeking asylum, which is a legal process, by the way. Unfortunately, it was gutted by Donald Trump, and so that needs to be rebuilt once again. I also visited Guatemala and Honduras so I could get a deep understanding.
He does the me thing. He does the me thing.
I also visited Guatemala. And
he's like, takes a second to lock in. He's like, okay, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You know?
Honduras, so I could get a deep understanding of the historical context
Bolivia.
As it relates to mass migration. It's not just Mexico. It's U.S. companies and other companies going into those communities, destroying the ecosystems there, which is leading to desperation, and that is why they are coming here. I think that conversation needs to be a part of this so we can take a much more humanitarian approach as we support the recently arrived migrants. And I want to say, the ones who have been coming into Westchester, our office and my amazing district director, Ashley Torres, has been working in partnership with Pace University, Neighbors Link, Make the Road, and West Hab to support those recently arriving with their paperwork so they could get their court cases done on time and they could begin the pathway towards getting a Social Security number, green card, and hopefully citizenship.
County Executive Latimer, how do you secure the border?
Thank you, Ron. Well, you know, I've been to Ardsley, and I've been to White Plains, and I've been to Yonkers, where some of these folks have come in. I've had a chance to talk.
Even the rhetoric there, secure the border. I know that Biden often repeats it, but, like, that is explicitly right-wing framing. We're talking about a bunch of refugees and migrants and what have you, and asylum seekers. And it's like, yeah, how do you protect our border? How do you secure it? This is a security issue, right? Explicitly right-wing framing.
Talk with them and understand their needs. Our county government has really been the singular, the second most important entity besides the local government. So credit Yonkers, White Plains, and Ardsley for the way they've handled those replacements. And the county has been right there to try to deal with them. You need an overhaul of our system. It involves requiring a bipartisan effort to do it. It has to be Republicans and Democrats in both houses. There was an initiative that started in that direction. Unfortunately, Donald Trump sent the word out, don't make any deals during a presidential election year. But it's not going to happen if it's imposed by one side or the other. It does include increased border security. I don't think you need a big, beautiful wall all across the Rio Grande River. I don't think that's a productive way to get better security. You do need to reform the asylum system. And I called for an asylum court to be established here in Westchester County's U.S. District Court. The incumbent made no call in addition to help me support that position.
Also,
but that would help us.
One at a time, please.
Sorry.
That would help us be able to adjudicate cases here and move people through, because you can't have people living in a hotel room for 2 years. That's insane. Also, you have to have a path for people to be able to work in this country, and we need the immigrant workforce in a number of different industries. So it is a flexible program that has to be worked out. I think it requires the congressional element. I think President Biden has said that. He looks to see a workable process in Congress that would move us in the right direction. I would be supportive of that process, and I would participate in that process were I in the House of Representatives.
Can I provide a rebuttal?
Quickly, because we've got to
just real quick. When he mentioned the migrants coming into Westchester, notice he had no specifics about how his office has worked specifically with them, while we named multiple organizations that did specific work with the migrants. That's one. Two, at the border, when I spoke to CBP, they mentioned that most of the fentanyl being brought into the country is being brought from American citizens, not immigrants. That's a key point.
George Latimer, go ahead.
That's true. That is true, by the way. That's like a oft under discussed element of the drug trafficking that happens in this country. Think about it. If you have a massive like volume of drugs you want to get into the United States and your whole criminal enterprise relies on it, what do you think you're going to rely on to be like the transfer mechanism? The person who the police will like specifically look for and oust? Like, hey, we have like two ways of getting on through. We could use American citizens, bribe officials, and do this the way we've always done it, you know, or we can like distribute it like, you know, across a wide range of citizen asylum seekers, all of whom can get caught. And like, no, it's like totally nonsensical.
The Westchester County Department of Health went to every single migrant that was placed in Westchester County, gave them full health update, make sure they were checked for all diseases, and then given vaccinations. That was the most substantive thing that was done for these, more so than whatever the congressman's staff was able to do. We worked with Neighbors Link and a host of other ones, Pace Justice Law School. So let's be clear. This county government has moved quickly and efficiently, and we were the only county government in this area to do those kinds of things.
Okay, we're going to pivot now to discuss abortion rights, gentlemen, which of course are under attack in certain states and at the federal level. Rebecca Pitts, an author from Dobbs Ferry, couldn't be here today, but she sent in a question specifically for you, Mr. County Executive. She writes, George Latimer has taken money from AIPAC, who also supports Republican candidates. We're seeing basic human rights reversed in real time. Access to reproductive health care is being restricted and denied. Can you please speak to your commitment to reproductive rights and access to health care? George Latimer, a timely topic when we consider that a state judge literally just threw abortion rights off the November ballot here in New York. How would you like to respond to Rebecca's question?
I think you're starting. The question really embeds in it the cheap political attack that's been made on me by my opponent and his backers. I've been a supporter of abortion rights through the course of my career. We even passed in Westchester County a clinic access law, which I signed.
How dare you question why my candidacy is being entirely propped up by a far-right organization? How dare you? There's no way that means anything. There's no way that is a warning sign of any kind.
Into law. That is a concrete fact. My record as a state legislator proves the same thing. Now, here's the problem. When you talk about people's campaign donation and you try to make a correlation to it, you need to look at all the campaign donations. My opponent has taken money from various PACs that have also supported Republican candidates. Isn't he as much in jeopardy of doing their bidding as he accuses me of doing?
No.
Well, once again, you've interrupted my rebut.
Oh my God.
The bottom line is this. Look at the actions of the individual. My actions prove who I am for 35 years, and your actions prove that you have a lot of talk, but not a lot of results.
You're the #1 recipient of AIPAC money in the country.
And why do you think
AIPAC is funded by right-wing Republicans who want to destroy our democracy.
AIPAC is funded.
Right-wing Republicans like Paul Singer and Bernie Marcus who are attacking abortion rights across the country. This is my 90 seconds.
I would like my.
Well, you could do your thing.
One at a time. I don't think it's productive if we speak over each other.
I got you.
Well, thank you. I got you too. AIPAC supports Hakeem Jeffries, Greg Meng, Richie Torres, Adriano Espaillat, and most of the Congressional Black Caucus. So he would have you believe that AIPAC, which is in one particular policy area, support of Israel, which he does not support Israel, that's the basis for their support to me. My position on choice has been clear and consistent over a long period of time. He's striving mightily to create a record, and if he had a stronger record as congressman, he wouldn't have to attack me. He wouldn't even have to mention my name. But the bottom line is he has a weak record as a congressman. That's why he's attacking me.
Notice how defensive this guy got when his allegiances got brought up again. So again, this guy may or may not be like, I don't think that this guy is like super far right who's hiding his positions or whatever. I think he's an establishment hack dem, like middle of the road politician who got offered a ton of money, like to win in this district, to be a goddamn congressman, you know, New York 16. I think he's bought off, and he knows it, of course, and I think that he gets defensive about it because most people really don't like the idea of them being completely shameless grifters. They hate that idea. They like to believe that there's some kind of underlying justification, so he gets really upsetty spaghetti when this is pointed out.
Grace Meng and Greg Meeks. Okay, that's who you meant to refer to, #1. #2, there's one candidate on this stage endorsed by Planned Parenthood, the #1 abortion rights organization in the country.
And there's one candidate endorsed by Westchester Coalition for Legal Abortion. One candidate.
Do your thing. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, we advocated for the impeachment of Clarence Thomas and Supreme Court reform, because we have to do everything in our power to get back against the MAGA Republicans who support my candidate and who are trying to take our election. I work in Washington on a consistent basis. I deal with these people. You don't have any idea what they are trying to do. I was there during the insurrection. So when we talk about reproductive justice, women's rights, racial justice, economic justice, I've been governing in that way with the people since I've gotten into Congress. I also want to say this. Everybody remember Robert F. Kennedy's speech after Dr. King was killed? What about Sojourner Truth's speech, "Ain't I a Woman"? My opponent continues to paint me as someone who is all rhetoric. Rhetoric creates movements and grassroots organizing that leads to American revolutions. That is what we need in this moment. We need rhetoric and results. We have both.
Go ahead, 30 seconds.
We need results. We need a person who's committed to getting things done, not just rhetoric. My opponent uses his seat as a platform to give speeches. He puts himself in the same category as Dr. King and Sojourner Truth. He's a congressman.
Super disingenuous with this. Like, obviously the point that he made was objectively correct. He's being disingenuous with this retort.
Representing the 16th district, who has spent more time giving speeches, and I might add, in Northern California, speaking in Michigan, all across the country, and he doesn't even know the name of the mayor of Rye Brook. Doesn't know the name of the mayor of Harrison, or the name of the mayor of Irvington.
I don't know those things either.
That's the difference between being vocal and being local. And a local candidate who will do the things that this district needs for it and stand up for social justice at the same time.
You know what? You know who I know? I know the name of the young girl who was stabbed and killed in Mount Vernon a couple of years ago, where I showed up and worked with Mayor Sean Patterson Howard and the Youth Bureau to bring in $1 billion to start a program for at-risk girls. I know her name. And I know the names of the other kids in our district killed by senseless violence, which you don't think gun violence is a big issue in our district.
That's ridiculous.
That's what you said.
That's ridiculous.
That's what you said.
That's
what he said. That's what he said.
Gentlemen,
and that shows you how he has neglected Yonkers and Mount Vernon and New Rochelle, and where the black and brown people live in poverty in this district and struggle with gun violence. He said it's not a major issue.
Okay, we need to move on, but go ahead.
We'll send it to everyone in a mass text after this, so you can see when he said it.
But gentlemen, I have to say, it is not productive if we're going to speak over one another. We've got a lot of important topics to tackle, and if the viewers can't hear your positions clearly, it's a waste of all of our time. So go ahead very quickly, Mr. County Executive.
If he launches an attack on me, I have to respond. I'm the person on the second day of the job who took the gun show out of the county center. That's a productive, active step. I voted in the state senate for the SAFE Act, which limited what could be sold in weaponry. So he's talking soup.
That's two things. You've been in office 35 years. You've been the county executive 7 years. The gun violence that happens in our district comes from guns that are trafficked into our district. Not at gun shows.
Do you see why he's an ineffective congressman?
Why? Because I raised my voice?
No, because he
argues. The people in here understand passion. They know that we need passion in this moment. You want to go to Washington and play nice with Marjorie Taylor Greene?
No, you vote with her, so why shouldn't you play nice with her?
Come on now.
Here's the point, and I'd like to make it, Madam.
What is that in reference to?
When you work in a legislative body, you need to form coalitions with people. You need to have their respect. You need to talk to them as normal people. You can't preach and scream at them on the steps of the Capitol.
Okay.
He's ineffective as a congressman for this very reason that you've just said.
We're going to have a lot of disappointed viewers if I don't rein this in.
The angry black man. The angry black man.
Let's stay on topic,
It's the Southern strategy in the North.
Let's stay on topic.
And they expect us to be quiet about it. We're not going to be quiet about it.
Let's stay on topic. Suki Van Dyke joins us now.
There's a lot happening here rhetorically that I'm interested by. So there are some good zingers from Latimer. We need results. That's a good one. This feels less helpful. Well, it's so what Jamal Bowman here is banking on is the idea that his opposition is a paid, bought-off hack, and that he is an actual passionate advocate. That is a real thing. That is a real divide, you know. This isn't purely performative or rhetoric, right? Like Bowman is like quite activist leaning, honestly, in his behavior. He makes claims to that point. He's arguing that, you know, I get results, but also I don't hide from the fact that I try to use my platform as like a soapbox from which to advocate my position on these issues, you know. And I think that what Bowman is doing here is trying to juxtapose himself against the well, maybe it sounds like a bit of a reach, but honestly, a lot of this does kind of feel like white moderate rhetoric in a way, where you have like the quote unquote like sensible, sane, professional white man who's, you know, like, all right, your high-minded like activist ideals have gone far enough, like we need results actually, and that needs moderation, and moderation means being a little bit more quiet. And in a way, I think it's not a one-to-one, but I think that vibe is there, and I think that Jamal Bowman has identified that and is leaning into it. And the question is going to be whether or not the people who view this are sympathetic to his identification of that, or whether or not they're going to think that Jamal Bowman is doing like unfounded race baiting. Does that make sense? you know?
Is a writer from Rye and has a question for us.
Hi, this question is for Representative Bowman. As a former school principal, you know how important role models are in our society. But as a member of Congress, you pulled a fire alarm when there was no emergency. We try to teach our children to be thoughtful with their actions, to not overreact when they're frustrated, and to take responsibility for their mistakes. Shouldn't we expect the same from our members of Congress?
Of course.
You know, just a totally normal audience, guys. Definitely not like, you know, just a completely ordinary audience, a completely ordinary debate setup. You know, definitely no chance at all of this whole thing being a constructed environment.
Of course, as soon as I pulled the fire alarm, I immediately said it was an accident, which it was.
Like, honestly, man, Jamal Bowman is stronger than me. Like, in response to that, I would fully just be like, you've all been paid to be here. Like, fuck, like, Jesus Christ.
I immediately took responsibility for it right after the fact. See, this is, talk about tactics, this is something that my opponent wants us to focus on instead of focusing on my record. 50 bills, amendments, and resolutions introduced in Congress. First time in history, we passed a resolution condemning the white supremacist Great Replacement theory, which is anti-Semitic and racist. We worked with President Biden to co-write the CHIPS and Science Act, which focuses on community wealth building and worker cooperatives. We even helped the county in applying for one of the grant programs as it relates to regional tech hubs, which the county is now involved in. As I mentioned, we brought in way over $1 billion, including the several billion as part of the American Rescue Plan when I was Vice Chair of Education and Labor as a freshman to make sure that the education investments were focused on equity in our district. So let's focus on results versus the lies.
Thank you, Congressman. George Latimer, any response to all
If you want
this?
to focus on results, I was a freshman state senator in the minority, and I got 6 bills passed. He's gotten no bills passed. Let's go back to the fire alarm.
I just named 2 bills we got passed.
You didn't pass them. They weren't your bills. The bottom line is this. When he pulled the fire alarm, he said it was an accident. Did you see it?
It's a disingenuous comparison to make anyway, because you can get stuff done in the state legislature, whereas in Congress right now, how many bills get passed in Congress, guys? Yeah, exactly. Nothing. And the only bills that do get through are the stuff that's so bland and obvious and bipartisan that they need to go through and nobody disagrees with it. It's like the stuff that gets through right now is like basic status quo billing. And there is absolutely no possibility right now of an environment in which like an engaged, enterprising young progressive like mobilizes the legislature and gets like a bipartisan consensus on a left-leaning bill. That it hasn't been like that for decades. The argument of like, oh, this person hasn't gotten anything done, like, because look at the bills that they have drafted and like what got passed, like it's not really a relevant metric, I don't think, unless you're a moderate. If you're a moderate, there's no excuse. Shape up.
The video shows him walking in with purpose, removing signage off the crash bar. Look at the video. Don't look at his act on the stage. He turns. He comes back.
This is how constructed the environment is. They are literally actually trying to make this a thing with the fire alarm, something only Republicans did. Only Republicans. Literally just that. Like, this is not a moderate Democratic position because this is a Republican op. AIPAC is Republican.
Back on the scene, he turns directly to the fire alarm and he pulls it and he walks off.
Like, look at this.
That's not an excuse. That's a lie. And if he'll lie about that, what else will he lie about? He'll lie about $1 billion. Hakeem Jeffries delivered $22 million to his district. He says he delivered $1 billion. That's a lie. This is what you have when you have a person who wants to be in the office in order to become important and special, as opposed to a person who comes in the office to...
Dog, this is literally like the white moderate thing again. This is literally uppity N-word. I'm so sorry. You guys know I'm an edgy boy. You guys know I don't like to sound like a race baiter or whatever, but holy shit, dude. Like, it's literally just like, you know, Jamal Bowman, how dare you, like, rise above your station and be loud. There's nothing specific here. It's not like there's a material argument being made. The fact that it's being dragged down to something as petty and insubstantial as the fire alarm pull, like, indication clearly, like, we know what this is meant to be. We know how this is meant to be. Insane. We need to get out there, guys. We need to win. ! PV. If you're in the area, we need to win. Okay?
do the job of a congressman in legislation and funding.
Right. By the way, if I was such a horrible person, Hakeem Jeffries would not have endorsed me in this race, along with all of Democratic leadership, including Whip Clark.
Not Hillary Clinton. Not Hillary Clinton, Mr. Bowman. Hillary Clinton, well known for being liked and effective, endorsed Latimer.
And Pete Aguilar. Okay. I still got some time for a rebuttal.
Go ahead.
So I don't know why it's so easy to trick you. First, they put out a still image to weaponize it. Then they put out a second video, but they never put out the other video of me running to vote, which would have been proof that I freaking did it by accident. I was trying to go vote. But that's fine. You can say whatever you want. It's all good. Let's keep
video,
going.
Dude, video
yeah, you saw the video you saw. I understand. I appreciate that. Just like I saw on Instagram that you said gun violence is not an issue in Westchester County.
I never said such a thing.
Okay, all right.
All right, we're going off topic now, and I do need to pivot to another crucial issue.
We're going off topic, the topic being the fire alarm poll. You know, let's keep it, like, folks, let's keep it classy. Let's stick to the relevant issues. Come on, guys. Come on. You know, let's talk about something else. Jamal Bowman, you're fat. I want to work with that. Latimer, you have 15 minutes. Go. What's this?
It's a bread and butter issue in all of our district's infrastructure. Our News 12 investigative team has spent the past 2 years digging into data for our Failing Foundations project, and the big takeaway was that our infrastructure is aging, crumbling, it's in desperate need of repair, and it's beyond just our roads and bridges. We're talking our electric grid, our cyber infrastructure, even our water systems are some of the oldest in the United States. Let's take a question now to tackle this critical issue. A retiree from Yonkers, Maria Rondonza, joins us now. Maria.
All right, folks, lock it in now. What do you think? Real question from real person or insane, unhinged right-wing plant?
Yeah, what is your question for the candidates?
Okay, both of you will be able to answer this because both of you are involved in this. Because both
immediate vibes, real person. Immediate vibes, real person.
You have given funds to Westchester and our thing. Can we, the citizens of this area, get a more transparent breakdown of the programs getting funds? I'm not seeing any money being spent to help taxpayers directly. Infrastructure as one. Roads are terrible. Water filtration systems, flooding caused by development that doesn't acknowledge flood risk.
The most normal person, the most normal voter at one of these is the person who is 70 plus, and when their time is up and they ask the question, they're like, why the is there a pothole on 58th right outside my driveway? No matter how I back out of my parking spot, the wheels hit it every time. Like, I've tried even backing into the space, but even if I drive forward out of it, it's still like, that's the most normal voter. That's the most real human. Everyone else is fake.
Where's the emphasis on my area?
George Latimer, how to tackle this regional issue that impacts us so much here at home. At News 12, I've lost track. She mentioned flooding, how many flooding events and extreme weather events we've covered in recent years. What is your plans to make us more
Let's try to narrow this down because there's so many different issues that fall under infrastructure. Westchester County has a budget, Maria, and you're welcome to see it. We're happy to meet with you and go through in detail. What are the projects that we have? $400 million this year, similar amounts the last number of years. We have fixed so much infrastructure, Sprain Ridge pools, Memorial Field, North and South County trailways, improvements in our sewer treatment plants, improvement in a host of different things that we in Westchester County have responsibility for. You want to see roads that are being improved? Mamaroneck Avenue from the southern part of White Plains. Mayor Tom Roach is here. From the southern part of White Plains all the way down to Mamaroneck Village, a project that the county tackled 20 years in the making. We come in, we got it done. Theodore Friend, Midland Avenue, and we have projects coming up in this year, bridge on Route 22. All of those projects represent our hard commitment to infrastructure. And we don't vote no and then claim that we actually support infrastructure.
I'm being told time is up. You have 1 minute in response, Congressman.
So the Yonkers sewage treatment plant, the Lake Isle Dam, new economic development in Mamaroneck, sewage in Rise, sewage in Mount Vernon. We have brought in resources to invest in all of these areas and many, many more. But infrastructure is not just about hard infrastructure without climate justice. We need climate justice. We are living in a climate emergency. The storms are more severe.
Maybe a bit too big of an answer. It's not untrue. I think it might be a little bit too big of an answer for the proportion of the question.
They're more consistent. That's why we have the flooding that we have. We worked with Senator Schumer to bring in $88 million to Mamaroneck after Hurricane Ida. We were together there for a press conference, and after the press conference, we walked down Mamaroneck Avenue. My opponent was accosted by people because he had been in office for a number of years and didn't do much on the issue. He left. I continued to walk down Mamaroneck Avenue from the laundry room there all the way to Duck Donuts, which is one of my favorite places, to have a conversation about the damage and to figure out how we could support them in rebuilding again.
We'll get to you after the break, County Executive Latimer. I apologize, but we've got to take a quick break. We'll have much more action from the debate floor here in White Plains.
More action,
Picking up on this conversation and much more, we'll also tackle rising hate at home just minutes away.
This is always, these debates are always difficult from a rhetorical perspective because you are a federal congressman. Like the policy, the stuff that you manage, it's at a national level, but you're trying to get like the local people to vote for you. And it's difficult because like Jamal Bowman isn't really a representative of the 16th. It's like when people say bullshit like their senator reps their state, which I mean sometimes, but for the most part, like you're kind of in there at a federal level, you know, especially with how ineffective Congress is these days. It's not like a lot of bills get passed. I mean, you spread the money around a bit, but all the way down to 16th, it's difficult. You know, what can you promise? What can you get away with promising even when you're mostly caught up in the national level politics? You know what I'm talking about? Hopefully you understand. Cut to the next.
Welcome back. We're quickly running out of time here at the first debate for the Democratic candidates of the 16th congressional primary. We last left off talking about infrastructure. County Executive Latimer, you wanted a quick rebuttal. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, and the Mamaroneck flood situation. Westchester County has put $17 million in our budget, and we have legislation prepared to pass the legislation. Put that $17 million towards actual project work. The state has done the same thing with their $27 million. The congressman takes great pride for having reauthorized $88 million, which was done originally by Elliot Engel 7-8 years ago. That money is not forthcoming. I don't know that we'll see it. So the state and the county are moving forward. The people that I talk to in Mamaroneck know me. We've worked together on this project, and they have confidence that if I say we're going to do this, we're going to do it. They don't have any confidence in promises that money's been delivered when it actually hasn't shown up.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in now to another crucial issue impacting our local neighborhoods, rising hate. News 12 has been tracking the data through our ongoing Hate at Home project, and it shows that bias and hate is surging against all religious and racial groups right now, but especially when it comes to anti-Semitism, which the FBI claims has reached now historic levels. Many students are concerned, students that include a 13-year-old from right here in Westchester County.
Wow. Hey, you know, just what a coincidence. In the audience, we actually have a anti-Palestinian Zionist student or whatever who thinks that the violence in college campuses has gone too far. I mean, we already talked about the student protests. It's very important that we keep talking about it, even though this debate happened. Okay, 4 weeks ago. It would have been a more like immediately pressing issue back then. But nonetheless,
Henry is joining us now with his dad. Thank you for being here. And go ahead with your question for the candidates, Henry.
When I read the news, I see so many...
You can look at your hair in your... You goddamn young Sheldon-ass mother... Shut up. Are you a college student? Are these not college campus? How old are you? He's 13. Oh, they said he's 13? What are you talking about? Are there campus protests on high school campus? What are we on about?
Stories about the spike in anti-Semitism and other kinds of hate. As a student in the district you are competing to represent, I'm curious about how you will handle these issues and safety in our schools.
Congressman Bowman, you take this one first.
So, Henry?
It's not too biased in terms of the framing of the question.
I'm a lifelong educator. I've dedicated my life to education and children, and whether I'm in Congress or doing something else, I will continue to work to keep children safe and to make sure we have quality education opportunities for our kids. The reason why hate continues to be persistent is because of historic miseducation that continues now in our schools and in our communities. We have been separated and segregated for so long and miseducated for so long. People don't even have knowledge of Jewish history or Muslim history or African American American history for that matter. One of the things I did in October after the horrible terrorist attacks on October 7th was hold a healing breakfast so I could hear from my Jewish constituents, so I could really understand their concerns, which would help me govern more aligned with what those concerns are. I also sponsored a trip for students from the Bronx to come down to Washington and visit the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And in the notes that I got back from students, many of them said that was the best part of their trip. So education is the key. I had one of the safest schools in the Bronx when I was an educator.
Running out of time, Congressman. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I had one of the safest schools in the Bronx when I was an educator, and I want to bring that same vision and energy for the kids in New York 16.
1 minute. George Latimer, please explain for us your plan to tackle rising hate.
Henry, what we did for schools is we brought together school superintendents and various individuals after the incident that happened at Roosevelt. There was a high school with LaFell School. There was a lot of debate back and forth about who said what. We brought them all together, and we went over certain efforts to try to help coordinate things before we went into the county center for Section 1 basketball, and we got a positive result out of that experience. Our Human Rights Commission, which I was part of creating 25 years ago, we've reactivated, Ken Jenkins and myself, in this term of office. And Tejas Anchala has reached out into every corner of this county to deal with anti-Semitism, to deal with anti-Asian hatred, Islamophobia, racism, and every other ism that exists out there. And I've made a point, not just of dealing with one or two communities that are subject to the hate, but all of the communities that are subject to the hate. And
I gotta say, to left-leaning Jews, it's gotta be really frustrating how anti-Semitism's like rise in America really began, honestly, more around like 2014, like when the alt-right like online stuff preceding the MAGA movement and Trump and the normalization of that rhetoric and everything following like the Liberty Caucus and all that. Like that was the real upswing in because it's always been an issue. But like, and then like none of that gets acknowledged. And now through this, you know, now the discourse happens.
What it comes down to is the way we speak and our rhetoric. If we're going to give long speeches about what's happened 100 years ago, we're not dealing with what's happening today.
Mr. Latimer, I have to move on because I promised that we'd get back to some more questions on the Israel-Hamas war, and we have some speakers.
Just let's sandwich the debate, you know? The beginning, Israel-Hamas. At the end, Israel-Hamas. In the middle, we pretend to engage with some issues of relevance to the local constituents, but even then we pepper it in, you know?
That took the time to show up today. They have questions for both of you. 2 questions back to back. We're going to do this lightning round style now. 30 seconds to each answer each of these questions. And let me welcome Asia Quattlebaum. Where is she? Asia's with us. Welcome, Asia. Asia's joining us from Co-op City, which is
Asia's
new
a
turf to this
continent,
district following the redistricting process. Asia, go ahead with your questions for the candidates.
As a Tufts University student who has participated in peaceful protests and visited encampments at other universities, the plight of Palestinian families affected by the ongoing conflict hits close to home. How will you ensure that international aid doesn't support governments or regimes involved in human rights violations?
County Executive Latimer, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I think it's important for American policy to look at all human rights records of the various countries out there. And while there are concerns about Israel vis-a-vis Palestine, there's also concerns about Iran. There's concerns about Syria and Lebanon and Yemen. And they have some of the worst human rights conditions across the board. So we need to have a balanced view of what is there and how we condition the way we interact on the basis of a...
We don't give billions of dollars of weapons to Syria or Lebanon or Iran. We give them to Israel. We do not shield Syria or Lebanon or Iran or Yemen from constant UN denunciations. We do not do those things. We do it to Israel, though.
Host of different issues. The Palestinian issue is before us today, but there is abuse happening in Sudan. There's abuse happening in China, all across this globe. And we have to be universal in the way we approach those human rights concerns.
All right, Congressman, 30 seconds.
Absolutely have to be universal as we deal with human rights, but the protests on college campuses are specifically related to U.S. tax dollars and weapons going to Israel as they bomb the civilians in Gaza.
Got it.
And so we called for a permanent ceasefire very early on. 69% of the district supports a permanent ceasefire. The majority of Americans supported permanent ceasefire. My opponent is standing with Benjamin Netanyahu and continuing the onslaught of innocent civilians in Gaza.
Okay, let me get to our last viewer question. Scott Dubin is here.
He's accused me of something I have to respond to. I don't stand with Benjamin Netanyahu. I stand with the hostage families. Those people should have their hostages returned. That's an essential...
Really? So you stand against Netanyahu because the hostages' families hate him. In fact, the protests outside is it the Knesset? Yeah, I believe it's physically outside the Knesset building. the protests there like are largely against Netanyahu because he has not protected the hostages. So you should be anti-Netanyahu then.
Part of what has to happen in the
Okay.
We call for the hostages to be returned multiple times.
You have to
Let's
make it part
listen
of the
to
deal.
our question
It is
from
part
Scott
of the deal.
Dubin.
We said that already.
Not when you call for an immediate ceasefire.
You gotta stop lying, man.
No, you're the one that's lying, dude. You set a record for lying.
Yeah.
Scott Dubin has been patiently waiting to get his question in. Go ahead.
Thank you. As a college student at NYU, I watched the Twin Towers come down from my dorm room window. Deeply impacted me. Mr. Bowman, you recently voted against H.R. 6408, a bill that revokes the tax-exempt status of entities which directly fund terrorism. As a congressional representative from New York, how can you defend voting against a bill that would slow money to terrorists?
Okay, Congressman Bowman.
Well, that bill conflates human rights organizations like UNRWA with Hamas and terrorism, which is not true, which I do not support. It conflates innocent Palestinians with Hamas, which is not true, which I do not support. So those were components of the bill that were wrong, which I do not support, and that's why I voted against that bill. Of course, I'm not supporting terrorism or funding of terrorism, even though my opponent said I take money from Hamas, which is a despicable, deplorable thing to say.
Your 30 seconds, County.
That was a really good response, actually. Because that's a tough one to answer immediately. Like they really do, like, you know, think fast. 9/11 hurls fastball at the stage. He handled that really well. It was well done.
I never said Hamas. I said Hamas supporters.
Man, come on.
And they want to, yeah, man, come on yourself.
Yes.
You want to represent a false narrative. Here's the bottom line. It was a bad no vote. The vast majority of members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, understood what that bill did, but Jamal and the squad voted no, just like they voted no on issue after issue after issue. They sit outside the mainstream of both Republicans and Democrats who want to see us deal with terrorism in a reasonable way. That bill was the right bill to vote yes on.
Okay.
He voted no, consistent with his philosophy.
Okay, such a lively and animated conversation so far, but believe it or not, gentlemen, it is time for closing arguments. The order agreed to ahead of time by both of our candidates. George Latimer, you're up first, and you have 1 minute, sir.
I grew up on the south side of Mount Vernon. My mom and dad had to quit school during the Depression, and they went off. My dad went off to war. My mother went off to a factory, and that's how they worked their blue-collar life. They were able to give my sister and myself a better chance at life. We worked hard to get ahead, and that story is an American story. I have neighbors who are African-American who have the same story. I have friends who are white. I have friends who are Latino, same story. We have to view the needs of this county and the county of the Bronx together as a universal story, not picking out pieces to try to speak to a base of voters to try to animate them. I'd go to Washington if you send me, and I'll work as hard as I did when you sent me to Albany, as hard as I have done as a county executive. Whatever he's tried to misrepresent the record, you know the record that we've had in Westchester County. It's an exemplary record. It's not perfect, but that's the kind of congressman I'm going to be. I'm not worried about who gives me donations. I'm worried about whether or not I can achieve anything in a system that's broken.
Thank you, Congressman. You have the same amount of time, 1 minute.
My opponent is in the pocket and bought and paid for by AIPAC, the largest recipient of AIPAC money in the country, okay? AIPAC is funded by the same Republicans who supported insurrectionists, the same Republicans who are against voting rights, who are against reproductive rights. We don't take money from special interests because we represent the working class people of the district, particularly those most marginalized, neglected, and left behind by my opponent and many others who have been in office for far too long. Okay. Why do black and I'm looking at the time. I got more time. No?
No, you don't, sir.
Okay.
That's your 10
these
seconds
are close.
passed.
Are these
we
not
are
close?
out of time.
Out of time.
The hour is complete. I apologize.
Whoa.
I've got to wrap up.
Look it up.
Gentlemen, I've got to wrap up the show. Thank you all so much for joining us at home and for sending in all of your questions. Thank you to our audience here in White Plains. This has been a debate brought to you by News 12.
Yeah, mods, but unironically. Yeah, we can all see, right? Yeah.
Optimum and the Business Council of Westchester. I'm Tara Rosenblum with one last reminder to get out and vote because we all know that local elections lead to national change. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you. Great job. Great job. That was
awesome. Exclamation point PV. Exclamation point PV. Seriously. Want to see you guys out there. You don't want to disappoint me, do you? You know what happens when I get disappointed. I get sad for a day, and I'm less likely to stream, which means less free content for you. Come on out there, okay? Really, it is insane. Don't you want something good to happen for once? Don't you want the good guys to win for once? Don't you want, like, for goodness to prevail, even? Wouldn't that be cool? If AIPAC spent $1 bajillion on getting this dipshit to oust Bowman and it fails? I think that'd be pretty nice.